Cheers. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the lobby. Thanks for joining, everybody. I'm going to hand over to Lewis, who's prepared some things to talk to you about. Any questions through, just raise a hand or take the mic off and get involved, support him. Over to you, Lewis.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So I'm Lewis. I'm going to speak to you a little bit today about my journey in Power Platform and where I've gone from being a student to now being a consultant. We'll touch a little bit on some community stuff, some sort of ways that we might approach getting students into the tech area and in Power Platform. I would also, if anyone's willing to share, if you've got any stories on, hearing about students going into Power Platform. I know that we have someone in the room that's actually on a degree program at the moment that is also doing some Power Platform stuff, and he's awesome. But we'll also touch on how people have started with some community work, that kind of stuff. And yeah, just have a bit of a chat about the education space and Power Platform. So I'll start with my journey. I'll try not to talk about myself for ages, but that's what I'll get started with. So I didn't start directly with Power Platform. That's not where I'm going to start the journey at. I'm going to start a little bit before that. And Power Platform was more sort of what I accidentally tripped upon in part of other work I was doing. So whilst let's go back to COVID. So COVID, before COVID, I was a performance swimmer at my local swim club, Maxwell Swim Club in Aylesbury. I did that for about 3 or 4 years, I think. Went through counties, regionals, that sort of stuff. Ended up in finals at regionals and counties, and that was great. I ended up not really wanting to do it so much after a little while. I had coaches telling me, you should really be aiming for nationals, that kind of stuff. But I think if you're not really enjoying something, to try and put a lot of effort in and reach those goals is quite difficult. It's the kind of thing where you'd be training like 16, 17 hours a week to try and achieve these goals, and I just wasn't really enjoying it. So I changed what I was doing a little bit. So I reduced down my hours loads, kept it up a little bit for fitness. Should really be keeping it up now, but has stopped. But I when COVID sort of hit, the swimmers that were obviously all still going, they would engage in online or sort of via Zoom, via Teams, fitness classes with our coaches, because they sort of needed to still be doing something, so that they go back into the pool in a good sort of sense, in a good way. But they obviously, none of us could get to pools, none of us could get to that facility. So we were all sort of online, on Zoom, that kind of stuff, and I wasn't doing it anymore. So I was sort of asking, are there any ways that I can stay involved? Because before we did go into the online sort of stuff, I was doing a lot of volunteering on poolside when I reduced my training hours. And I would sort of help with the coaches writing sets up on the board, giving sort of skills tips and that kind of stuff, little corrections. But that wasn't obviously something I could do when we were away from the pools. So I was like, is there anything I can do to stay involved, sort of give a helping hand, that kind of thing? And it ended up with me helping our treasurer and doing sort of little bits of admin here and there. And that was great. That was really cool. It kept me busy whilst I was in that period of GCSEs to A-levels where we finished really early in March, because that's when the government said this academic year is, we're all going to get predicted grades. No one's going to actually sit their exams. So we had nothing to do until September again. So it was a big chunk of time that I needed something to do. So I ended up doing that sort of stuff, administration with my swim club. The first thing that was so apparent was, wow, we do not have any processes in place, any orderly fashion of how we do things. We don't work collaboratively, and there isn't a single IT solution in place other than people having their own online email address and, their own laptops that they've gone and bought somewhere at some point. So there was no continuity. There was nothing from a company perspective So for me, it was a little bit like we needed to do something about it. So I was pestering away at our treasurer because she's obviously the budget holder. She says what we can spend the money on. And I was going, please, please, we use this thing at school. We use Teams and it's fab. Please, would you let me look into this and roll it out for the swim club? I had no experience at all in Microsoft 365 sort of administration, any of the back end type stuff. I was literally just an end user, and only one that really touched on Teams, the tiniest bit of SharePoint and Outlook, and obviously the Office apps as well. So I had no clue what I was doing, but still said, I think this is something that we need to use. Let me go and check it out online. Here's the pricing page. Let's get some licenses and go with it. And within 2 days, I'd rolled out Microsoft 365 for our 30 combined volunteers and paid staff, as well as Teams, and got some stuff going with that. And that changed a lot for us. That was really good in terms of we're now able to work collaboratively. We're tracking our coaches' paid time with shifts in Teams. We've even started to build, or we've got a number of Canvas apps that our coaching staff are now using to manage our trials process, where swimmers or parents of swimmers will sign up online for a trial. We'll book them in with our Power App solution. They'll get automated sort of emails that are all nicely HTML branded, that kind of stuff, or formatted even. And they'll get information about the club that's all automated, that kind of stuff. And this is nothing that anyone would receive before. And this is what I was able to roll out quite quickly. And then I was still in that lockdown period, but as I started to roll that out, I kept working on it whilst I was at sixth form. So the next 2 years I was at sixth form. Our sixth form staff approached us and sort of said, there's these 8 different volunteering opportunities that you could get involved in. You need these for your UCAS forms, you need these to apply to unis, that kind of stuff. And they were things like you can go and help with the coffee shop and you can do litter picking and that sort of stuff. And I thought, none of it's all too engaging, too great sounding that I'm really going to get a lot of stuff out of. So I sort of said to them, right, this is what I'm doing for my swim club. I know that you're a Microsoft school. Is there anything that I could help with or that I could do? And they said, right. Because so my school was part of an academic trust, and we also had a tutoring nonprofit that had just started up over COVID to sort of what was it? They were trying to counterbalance the damage of COVID through funding from the government that was then used for tutoring our pupils across the trust. And they needed a way to basically track all of that stuff of tutoring contracts, sessions that they would book in. They needed to control attendance, report any issues of safeguarding that their tutors might notice. And previously, this was all on this ginormous Excel spreadsheet. I don't actually think I've ever seen anything worse in my life, by the way. And yeah, it was a bit icky. They used stuff like comments for people's phone numbers and email addresses, which was very interesting. But there you go. That's how they rolled. So they said, well, we've seen this thing called Power Apps. And by the way, the swim club Power Apps that I did were after this, so I've gone that in the wrong order. But this was when they said to me, we've seen Power Apps. We want to have a little look at that. So I had absolutely no idea what it was. And they said to me, they really knew what they wanted. Well, no, they didn't know what they wanted. They knew a bit of the technical side of what they wanted, despite not being technical. So that was interesting. They said we wanted to use our SQL on-premise server, and we want to build Canvas apps and that kind of stuff. I said, okay, cool. I have no idea what it is, but let me go and take a look at it. So I went away and sort of looked at what it was, ended up thinking, wow, this is going to cost them a lot because suddenly you've got to premium license all of this because you're using premium connectors for SQL. You're making this quite difficult because actually you're not working with an awful lot of data at all. But they were quite sure on what they wanted. Anyway, I managed to persuade them in the end that that wasn't what they needed. Then their requirements kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, yeah, they did need Dataverse. So they needed something that was a bit bigger with a lot more relational structure and that kind of stuff there than what SharePoint gives us. So I ended up building sort of an end-to-end solution for managing tutoring at my school's trust. And that worked really, really well. I then went on to work with the digital services team at my school's trust. So it was less working with a couple of people that had started this initiative, and it was more working with the central services team that govern trusts, and they do all of that sort of business operations side. And I ended up rolling about 10 solutions out across 2 schools, as well as the work I did with our tutoring nonprofit. So we did stuff like a classroom emergency management tool. We did stuff like leave and training requests, all your simple sort of stuff that we all know we've all done with Power Apps. We did stuff like a first aid log, and we did after school curriculum registers, that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. I got to work over the 2 years that I was at sixth form with a really great team of people, building some really cool apps, and that set me up with a really nice chunky amount of experience to then be able to look at my next steps. It definitely gave me something like, yeah, that's definitely what I want to do. And the annoying thing that I would say for me about it is that it wasn't something that someone would show me. It was something that I had to accidentally stumble upon. And that is a little bit of a problem that I'll come back to in a bit about the pathways that students sort of have access to in education and that kind of stuff, is that Power Platform just is not there. Students do not know about it. Staff will not tell students about it. They don't know about it themselves. It's the very typical route out of A levels is that they want you to go to university and follow that sort of standard pathway. There is work being done there, and I'll come back to it a bit more in a bit, but I'll go back to what I did after sixth form. So April this year, I think about March, Feb, I sort of finished working with my school's trust. We started to sort of close off documentation on the solutions that we'd done, hand them over to some people that I was sort of training up a bit or training up to where I was at that point. And that kind of stuff. Then in April, I started part-time at Hybrid Services as an internal Dynamics 365 and Power Platform developer. And that was quite cool for me because suddenly I had a really flip side to what you do with Power Platform. Because obviously Dynamics straight away, it's the solution out the box. Obviously we can customize it, but it's a solution out the box, and you've got that business use case there straight away. So it was a really, really good way for me to learn how things worked on the business side, because through doing work and operations based development, whilst it was on the education side, you didn't get that idea of what does the sales process look like, and how do we log accounts and that sort of stuff. So that was quite interesting. To start with Dynamics, I got to learn that business side of what we sort of do, how that works in IT. So that was quite interesting. I didn't stay working on Dynamics for too long. Actually, let's go somewhere else first. So not long after, I ended up a really cool place with someone that's in the room today. I ended up at Ignite this year, speaking on a session about cloud ecosystems, and whether we adopt a unified cloud ecosystem or we adopt multiple different technologies for our requirements. I joined Chris, who's in the room, for that. That was a fantastic talk. It was awesome being at Ignite. Just to be there, let alone speak, was fantastic. And then I came back after that and was, lucky enough to have a promotion to become a Power Platform consultant at Hybrid. I definitely do prefer the Power Platform side. Obviously, I know customer engagement is built on Power Platform, and Dataverse is the same kind of thing. But I definitely prefer the more creative side of building a solution up from the ground, as opposed to working with the battles that I worked with when I worked on Dynamics, and solutions that were dependent on each other because people didn't follow best practice when I started here. It was great, but there you go. Yeah, so Power Platform has been, I definitely have enjoyed returning to the more Canvas app side of stuff, and the creative side is what I like to call it. But yeah, I am now working as a consultant at Hybrid and getting to work with a number of customers on different solutions, which is really, really quite cool. Around that, there is also the community side of what I do a bit more. Obviously, I touched on Ignite a bit. So I think my community work started at the well, I suppose you could probably count in Less Code More Power when I had one of my solutions featured on one of the Microsoft shows. That was a really, really cool thing to do with Donna Sarkar, who's the Director for Accessibility for Technology at Microsoft. She's fab. So that was really, really fun. At the start of this year, though, I started my blog, Low Code Lewis. I think I'm near the 40 post mark now. So I could have been a bit quicker. I haven't been too crazy on it, but it's definitely been a really, really cool way to get into some community stuff. And I'm really liking sort of blogging on some technical topics, some more advanced stuff compared to where I was starting, and seeing how I can support the community with that. So that's sort of where I started with community stuff, and sort of gone further into attending events, speaking. I've co-founded a user group with one of my colleagues at Hybrid in the Buckinghamshire and Northamptonshire area. And we meet it's either the first Wednesday of the month or the last Wednesday of the month. So we had a meetup yesterday, and the next meetup will be the end of January, on the last Wednesday of January. And I will post information about that soon, so keep your eyes peeled on LinkedIn and all those kind of places for that. But before I continue, if anyone's happy to sort of come off of mute and share their story a little bit, I'm sort of interested as to how other people have started with their community work, and how they've gotten further into it. So if anyone's happy to unmute, do go ahead and share how you've gotten started with the community. Oh, wow. Okay. Chris, go on, start.
Right. Hey, man, what's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. Yeah, really cool, dude. I love hearing your story. So firstly, just Sarah, thanks for putting this together. Yeah, man, Lewis, your story blows me away every time, because like I always think about what I was doing at your age, and then what what I was like kind of running around and like causing trouble. And now, I probably could have spent a bit more time doing some tech. But yeah, I think the community in the UK, we're quite lucky because we have quite a lot of welcoming people. And, we a lot of the folks on this call, like EY, Alexio, we got some really, really great people like MCJ who bring people in. And I guess, with Peter being one of the folks that you're working with, bringing you into the community, that's a really big deal. So I was brought in by like Andy Bibby, right? So Andy was one of the guys that brought me in. And I got to tell you, like, I always say to people, anytime you question whether you should get involved or not, just do the thing. Because it's
100%.
incredible, man. Yeah, and I feel like when I came here from South Africa, I didn't really know that many people. So I didn't have that many friends. I came here with a bag. And then, probably 2 years later, I had this massive group of mates who I spent lots of time with. Like I was at Alex's house, a couple of months back, barbecuing and drinking lots of beer, talking about tech. And then also our kids were hanging out, man. Like, so this is what I always think. It's always great to have these amazing people around us and uplifting us. So, dude, you're one of those people, and now you are bringing all these amazing people with you. So I wanted to just say thank you, man, and well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. No, yeah, I completely agree. And I think the other thing is that it just makes work fun as well. I mean, obviously the technology that we're working with already, I love it. It's fantastic, and work is fun as it is. But community in there as well just makes it so great. EY, do you want to go next?
Sure, I will indeed. So my first exposure to the community was Summit EMEA 2018. when I dipped my toes into community, went over to Dublin for it. If I look back, the number of people I know now who actually were there in person, but I had no idea of, is incredibly amazing, and I really wish that I'd known them earlier. But really, apart from that, I then attended a user group because I thought, okay, we got this big event, let's go to a local event. And I was sort of standing around, and everybody seemed to know each other, and all these amazing people were talking about stuff. And I was sort of hovering on the outskirt of a little group of people trying to hear. And I'm 6'2", so I'm not really very small, although admittedly my little brother is 6'8". But anyway, there was this big, tall South African guy who suddenly put his arm around my shoulder and pulled me in, and I went, okay, I don't know what's happening, but and he said, dude, you look like you know something, come and join the conversation. I'm not going to try to imitate his accent. And he sort of pulled me in, and then he explained to me the concept. Instead of standing in a circle, you stand inside of a semicircle and people can come into it. And he brought me in, and then he went, dude, give me your number. And I thought, I've got no idea who he is, but okay, giving a random guy my number for it. But anyway, he then messaged me later on. He went, you got some really cool stuff. And it was, of course, Scruff, who is on this call, who just spoke. And that got me felt like I had something to say. I had a sort of a place at the table, albeit we were standing, and I started to interact with some. I felt more confident in interacting with others. Almost 5 years later, I blog regularly, I do a YouTube thing, I speak at events, I mentor others, and I put myself out there because although I may seem by nature to be really conversational and other stuff, I'm actually much more comfortable behind a webcam. I met my wife through an online dating site, a legit dating website, I will say, but yeah. So, but I really hated talking in person and community. I was the guy at the back of the room just listening, and then I slowly pushed myself to be part of it, and it's amazing just all the other people around.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, and that thing of like just, you know, spotting that person that isn't, you know, so included in the conversation and at the back and bringing them in is fantastic. And when people have done that to me before, it does make it seem so genuine, so much nicer. And that really is, I think, what community is about, is getting more people involved, getting everyone to join that conversation and that kind of stuff. So that's, yeah, really great to hear. Louis, do you want to go next?
There we go. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah, cool.
So, hi. So, well, what do I have to say? So, I started Power Platform 2 months ago. I mean, Chris brought me in. We met at university. We studied together. So right now I'm studying earth sciences. And yeah, so we were just chatting and we became friends. And then he told me about his job, and I was just like, that sounds so insanely cool. And in the end, I decided to actually start doing it. And I've been doing Power Platform for 2 months now, as you obviously know, because you've been helping me out too. And so, yeah, I'd say I've been more on the receiving end of how the community is great, because, well, I've met some really great people who have included me, like Chris here, like you. And yeah, it's really amazing, this community and Power Platform.
100%. I mean, I'm not completely sure, because obviously I'm very Power Platform based, but I'm not 100% sure on like what the tech communities are like in other spaces. I don't know. I obviously know that, yeah, they exist. There are other big communities. I don't know quite if they compare to Power Platform, but all I'm saying is that I know that Power Platform, I think it's the best. So, and the community space is fantastic, and it is about sort of helping each other out, picking out people and going, you know, I'll help you out with this, I'll help you out with that, and pushing each other up. And I think that's what's really, really great about it. And everyone else on the call, by the way, this guy is doing some awesome stuff within only 2 months. I see Chris's post the other day that he's already doing like graph stuff and HTTP requests and all sorts like that. Like, he's doing some crazy stuff. So yeah, hats off to you.
You're awesome, man.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to go next?
Hi there. Firstly, really awesome to hear your story. Chris has been talking about you for a while now, so it's really interesting to hear from you about your journey and things like that. So like, I'm really inspired by what you've been doing. It's great. Keep it up.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you.
So my intro into community is I went to a user group in London, and Andy Bibby, who Chris mentioned, used to organise a little meal for a bunch of the people that were going the night before, so to socialise. And he turned to me, and Andy Bibby, he said to me, why aren't you presenting tomorrow? And I said, well, what am I going to present on? Like, you know, I have things that I like, but does anyone really want to hear from me? And Andy turned around to me and said the best piece of advice I ever had, which was, everyone has something they want to say, and at least one other person wants to hear it. So if you submit a session, if you get involved, someone will want to hear it, no matter like what you think about it. So the one of the first sessions I submitted was on word templates, because I really like them. But if you talk to anyone, they start to fall asleep as you start to talk about them. However, I had at least 20 people in that room on that first presentation, and that really got me going. Like, wow, people actually do care about these things. They do want to hear these things. They want to hear from me. So that's one thing I've been trying to say to everyone that I've met. Trying to get people involved in the community, trying to bring them into user groups and speaking or blogging or whatever your medium is, however you want to get involved, just do it, because at least one person will want to hear about it. And as you can see, there's like 13 people in this call wanting to hear about you. So well done, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really completely agree with that point of there's always going to be someone that's having that same issue as you, or that wants to know more about that topic that you like. And it's like, I've posted blog posts before that haven't had so much sort of engagement on. Some have had more, but there, you know, it doesn't matter. There's stuff that some people will have more of an issue on, and they won't see in other content, and stuff that other people will see. Actually, I prefer that thing. But there's always something for someone, and that's what's great, is that so many people are covering so many different things. So that's a really great insight. Thank you. Alexia, do you want to go next?
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, Lewis, I have to say, heads up to yourself, man. Lots of applause to you. I remember meeting you at South Coast Summit.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish I had that confidence he has. Because how I got into community, I went to a user group in London, and you know, you have the auditorium, people are right at the front. I went to sit right at the top in the corner because I was really scared and I was nervous. So yeah, so from that point, yeah, it came across Chris, MCJ, and EY. So one of the best things of EY said to me, "Oh, Alex, I want to invite you to the Oops Factor." And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but what am I gonna say? So I was really nervous, right? So yeah, I had a chat with EY, and he made it really comfortable. So it just goes to show the spirit of the community. So if you look, for example, in my case, I had an issue I was dealing with, and I wasn't so sure where to go. So EY picked up a phone call and just said, "Oh, Alex, I think you should go and do this." And from that phone call, it kind of basically unblocked an issue I had. And you have, yeah, lots of people. Chris, I'm always bugging him about things. I'm asking questions. MCJ. So it just shows how great the community is. And what I can say to you is, keep going. The sky is the limit for you, man.
Thank you so much.
You're doing amazing stuff.
Thank you. And yeah, I think I completely relate to that as well, is that bit of like, I think we're all a bit nervous to first step in and to dip your toe into that thing that's new. But actually, once you do it, I mean, and this is what I found with everything I've done in the community, is that, yeah, that first thing of starting it is like, I don't know if I'd like that or not. If I'm going to get it right, am I going to say the right thing? But you know, even if you do say the wrong thing, even if you don't get something technically right on a topic, it is so much more that community is just there, and we are all just so just nice and caring and that sort of stuff about each other, and I think it's just fantastic. Go on, Chris.
Yeah, dude, I want to second that, because you know, one of the things that I experienced, and this is something crazy. Sorry, this light's making me look like a vampire. Here we are. Like, one of the things I experienced is that fear of kind of getting into a group and also speaking in front of people. And I'll tell you something, a really great story of something that happened to me at Scottish Summit, the first ever one they held. So I was doing a presentation on data and integration, right? Like, don't ask me why, I can't remember, but I had in the room, so I had Will. So Will was sitting in the front row. Then I had Lucy Bourne, I had Jonas Rapp. I had loads of people, man. It was like a really cool crowd. And I was talking, and there was this one guy. And man, he was mean, hey? And he was just being a total, not going to say the word. And Yeah, man. So like basically I was answering his questions and I was quite lucky because I'd had a bit of a fair amount of speaking experience from there. But something I noticed happened in that room is that other people in the room actually ended up sorting him out. And they, I
Yeah,
mean, this is at an extreme way, but they were like, dude, just be quiet, like let him get on with it. And what's quite cool in the community is that we all have speaking buddies and we all have folks that look after us. And what I would say, I'm going to give you an example. So Lewis, my other mate Louis, who just came on, you were chatting to the guy from the college that I go to. I know we got to. So he's going to do a speaking event hopefully in Feb, and he will have a speaking buddy, and I will be at the back of the room. And if he ever feels uncomfortable, like that speaking buddy gets involved. And just everyone on the call, if you want to get involved in community, don't worry. There are always going to be people that have your back and that are experienced speakers and will help you. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point, is that everyone really does have each other's back. And, you know, there isn't this kind of thing of everyone's there to make sure you're saying the right technical thing, or that you need to do it in the right way and, you know, always get it perfect. But it is more of a thing of let that person have their chance. Let them, you know, step into that. Let them do their thing. They might not be at the level that you're at. They might not have the knowledge that you've got, but that's not completely what it's about. And that's what's really, really great about it. So I think I'll move on now slightly to the more education side again. And I do really want to focus, well, let's talk a bit more about where Education and Power Platform is at the moment. So obviously when how I've gone into Power Platform hasn't been a route that teachers have been able to support a lot with. They haven't been able to go, well, this is the next step, this is what you can do, this is what you can get involved in. And, you know, as much as I think a lot of schools have careers advisors and that sort of stuff, and I had one at school, she was fantastic. She was really, really helpful. But the difficulty is they don't know everything. You know, there are so many opportunities out there and industries are so fast changing that to keep up with it, it's just impossible to know every pathway for every student and match them to the right thing. But there is that sort of thing of Power Platform isn't, you know, schools don't know about it. Well, on the educational side anyway. On the operations side, they might be a bit more aware of it, starting to use it a little bit for operations. I don't think for educational purposes it's much really there, or as much as it could be yet. But definitely on a careers perspective and a pathways perspective, it's not surfaced to students at all. It's always the approach of, okay, you could go and do an apprenticeship, you could do this, you could do that, you could go and do uni, that kind of stuff. It's all those standard approaches that we've always taken. And to be honest, I don't know that they're always the right thing for everyone. Well, yeah, I really don't agree that they're the right thing for everyone. I definitely wouldn't have benefited compared to what I'm doing now from going to uni. That would have been a complete waste of time for me, if you ask me. And absolutely, it's the right thing for other people. For me, I would have wasted 3 years doing God knows what, because I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the degree I was doing. And yeah, it would have been a complete waste of 50 grand and the time that I spent there. But my sort of thing was, obviously I stumbled upon it myself, had to figure it out, did a lot of self-learning, self-work, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, had conversations with a few people, ended up managing to find somewhere that I could go and do it full time. It's not necessarily that easy for everyone, I don't think. I think it's difficult to assume that everyone's going to be able to just figure it out for themselves. And, you know, when it comes to every other pathway that's sort of advertised and given to students in schools, they're not expected to figure that out for themselves. And I think there is an element of Power Platform I found it to be such a fantastic route that I've taken. And I think it could be fantastic for so many other students if they were aware of it. And I think there's a lot of work there to do to make people aware of it. The difficulty I think that there is that when it comes to potentially upskilling students and delivering content on Power Platform and getting them to start to get to grips with the basics and working towards sort of like fundamentals type stuff, is that technology is so fast changing that by the time a teacher or someone that's working towards that pathway has gotten their subject nailed down, they know what they want to teach, they know what they want to sort of work on, they've done their teaching degrees or whatever they need to do, technology's already changed, and we're already, you know, another 5 years down the line, and we're working with a new stack of products or a stack of products that's completely different to what it was 5 years ago. And I think that's the difficulty of it would be so difficult to get something like this into the curriculum because it isn't you know, sort of the generic thing of standard programming languages and that kind of stuff, and it is so fast changing. So there is a bit of a difficulty there. So I think the idea of students finding Power Platform and that sort of stuff perhaps does fall down to the community a bit more, and those kind of spaces, or, you know, programs by Microsoft and that sort of stuff. So there is something that I want to share that was released, I don't know, I think it was last week, possibly in the last 2 weeks. And I spoke about this yesterday at a company event as well. We had a modern campus sort of education event, and I talked a little bit about this. But this is about the Power Platform University program and the Power Platform University Hub. So the University Hub is a partnership between the Project Management Institute and Microsoft that provides an online curriculum for students to work on alongside their degree programs and what they're doing at uni already, but lets their universities see their progress with it and see how it's sort of going at the same time. Once they finish that online curriculum, they actually come out with 2 certs. So they get one from PMI, which is a citizen dev practitioner sort of certification or micro credential, and they get PL 100, the app maker certification as well. I really like this. If anyone in the call wants to do me a huge favor today, please share this. Please make your LinkedIn connections and your followers know about this. For any of the students that follow you, make them aware. If they're looking in the tech space, this could be something that they might be interested in. I'm not saying it will be perfect for them. I'm not saying that it will be the thing that will match their needs or what they want to do with their career. But I think it's really key that as much as we can make this visible and surfaced to students and sort of people that this could benefit, that people do find out about this. I think it's a really great program that they're putting on. I do think that we're still missing that part of secondary school, sixth form, or in the States, high school. So there is that gap of people are still going to uni, potentially doing a degree that they're not going to have a lot of benefit from, but might tick a box on paper. And in more modern cases anyway, sometimes doesn't even need to be a box ticked on paper. And they could have potentially done this in their own time and then gone into it, or there could have been a program for them at that time. But if you want to do me a favor, if you'd like to share this, I would really appreciate that. I think this is something that's really important if we can get people aware about this. But I think there's about 28 universities. 28 universities have participated in a pilot program for this, and that's already set 1,500 low-code student devs on a pathway to building business applications and learning things and starting to get to grips with that for the future companies that they'll work for. And the great thing is that they do get those certs that make them employable, and having, you know, those Microsoft credentials on their CV straight away will make them that bit more employable, or they might have that better chance of getting that job than the person that's sitting next to them that just has the degree. So this is a really great program, I think, and something that I'd definitely like if people would promote a bit, if you don't mind. Obviously, keep your channels as you like to keep them there. I'm not forcing anyone. But if anyone else has got any sort of points on what they think would be good, I don't know if it's in the community, in terms of getting students into tech or into Power Platform, go ahead, say something. Jamie, go ahead.
Good to hear your story, Lewis. I do like your blogs, because it almost feels like when I read your blogs, I feel like they're at the right level for me, even though like I've been around for a long time. But sometimes you get these ones where they're like really basic, or sometimes they're just too deep dive, and so really useful.
Thank you. Thanks.
So a bit of my, just to give a bit of background, so I've just finished a contract for a public sector body. I thought I got told I had a team of 6, and then I started, and I got told they don't quit because they don't want to work with Power Platform. But in that 12 months, I built the team from 0 to 10. Now, that's with public sector pay, which is rubbish. But that was about looking at how do we attract people, do we get people into it? So some were experienced people, but some was using a degree program. And the great thing about the people on the postgrad program was they were speaking to other people in their cohort, and what they were doing after 2-3 months was, the people at other companies using different tech were doing documentation. Mine were doing overhauling the HR system.
Yeah, exactly.
So there really is that, and I think there's a few things. So there's this real obsession with people having degrees. I don't have a degree, right? I'm a solution architect. I've worked for some really big clients. My last client, I couldn't get them to get rid of the degree requirement, but then again, they struggled with the concept we wanted to work part-time as a single parent. So, I wasn't going to get the degree requirement. But sometimes we sort of, there's a real problem with the degree, because we all talk about diversity and inclusion, and there's a real challenge of having degrees. With where I am on the autistic spectrum, doing a degree, I just cannot do. It's like how to put me into a complete state. So we talk about getting people into the community, involved, into the career path. Really think, do you need a degree to do this? I haven't got a degree. I'm guessing, Lewis, you haven't got a degree yet. So
I don't intend on it either.
Yeah. And then if we go back to education, I think historically there was a bit about computing GCSE. There was a real big criticism that, it's a Microsoft GCSE. So that's why one of the big things why they stopped doing Microsoft in schools, because it got viewed as a Microsoft GCSE, not a computing GCSE. And so that's a bit there. So, but one thing I always try to do is make sure there's sort of realistic things that people can work on, because with my graduate schemes, I gave them smaller apps to develop fully, rather than just giving them a little piece of a big project.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to learn unless you can be given ownership of a whole thing, even though it might be just an annual leave request. Target colleges, target students, get apprenticeships. I'm looking at taking on an apprentice next year. It's not easy because you have to map. There's about 2 or 3 apprenticeships that it could be at, but you have to sort of map it yourself into what that's going to look at, and you need to work out, what you have to think what's going to be the progression for that person, and move them around. And I've had it where, a few years ago working at the University of Manchester, I had apprentices working with me. I had to, but we had to sort of give them like secondments to other teams just so they could hit the targets of that apprenticeship, because there's some specific things which were code. So I think there's a lot of things about there, and as I say, we need to sort of be saying, this is a career you don't need a degree for. You need to be giving entry routes. We need to be mentoring people. If you're in uni, at least a dozen universities use Dynamics and Power Platform. All of the Manchester ones use Power Platform. So free resource. A lot of colleges use it. Free resource. We need to think about that, and what are the case studies and challenges we give people to have something meaningful. And I think it's just having that support as well. And something I've done, I've always picked up. I don't want to say waifs and strays, what waifs and strays. So I know one guy, someone who now works with Chris. Actually, I was working for a client about 3-4 years ago, and he was just the admin, but he was actually maintaining the whole Power Platform solution for this government body. And he's now a consultant working in the same place as Chris. But that was, when you see someone in an organisation that is doing this, tap into it, mentor them, tell them about the courses, take them under your wing, and really sort of, encourage people. And I think that's, we need to stop relying on the traditional route, because it's not just Power Platform. There's a shortage of tech skill across the board, and we really need to think about how do we get people involved. Because the thing is, if there's no one to maintain Power Platform, people will stop using it, and that puts me out of job and it puts you out of job. So it's in our interest to make sure we're getting the next gen. I talk about next generation. I mean, you are the next generation. But it is in our interest to make sure we're constantly educating, constantly bringing people on, even if it's not speaking at engagements. It's about getting that person next to you and come here, have a look at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think just the other thing to point out, my 17-year-old lad, he's not techie, but techie as he used iPhone. But I got him building an app to track his apprentice applications. He was able to do that. In a week, he's doing it. He's sending off emails to employees automatically through it. And he's not interested in working in tech, but he's able to do it. So it's really easy to get into. We just need people to be given that nurturing and shepherding in the right direction. As you say, it's that, where do I go next?
Yeah, I think it is that it is that surfacing, and that, this is actually what's available. Where can I step into this? What can I do next? That kind of stuff, because it is so easy to get to grips with, to get started with. I think my first apps, I actually had a bit of a stuck point for a little while where I was almost arguing with myself that the way that I was trying to go about it wasn't actually what I wanted to do. Like, this SharePoint list doesn't look like a database. I was like, no, I don't actually like that. And Dataverse was like, well, I don't actually know where this is to start with. And so I had this period where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. But then when you just go for it and go, okay, I'm going to accept what it is and say, let me tie a SharePoint list up to a Canvas app and have a go at it, it's actually super easy to get started with. So I think that whole thing of just surfacing it, making students aware, bringing someone under your wing, that kind of stuff is fantastic, and definitely is probably the way to get a little bit more traction and a little bit more of students being aware of this kind of stuff. Because I think the traditional route, as you say, is probably not how this is going to take off in that space. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add? Notice your hand went up there.
Actually, I'm going to say something cheeky. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I have a buddy on this call, and she is currently teaching kids, and she's her daughter at least, and she's put a curriculum together, a very basic one. I'm probably going to get something chucked at me. I don't want to single her out, but like,
not chucked at you. I'm always happy to help, Chris.
Yeah, I just thought I'd tell them that. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 7-year-old daughter, and one of the first projects we did together was actually do a Power Virtual Agent together, because she wanted to be able to talk to a unicorn. So I was like, well, what kind of questions do you want to ask the unicorn, and what would the unicorn answer? So we built that out together. So I've been kind of teaching her basic Power Platform principles over the last year or so. And during the summer, she attended a summer camp on like animation. And I was thinking about how fun it would be to have a summer camp for kids that age that was around Power Platform and like the basics of like logic and, steps through flows and things like that. And so I put together a basic curriculum and I presented it to her 2nd grade teacher, and she approved for me this year to come and spend a week with the kids and test it out with them and see how the curriculum works. So I'm really excited, because I think it could be the start of something, of teaching these kids at a really early age, because they are using apps and they are using all of this stuff to learn some of those fundamentals that get them excited about what it is that we're doing. And I don't know if you guys have seen these flick buttons, but I put like rhinestones all over mine. And so I reached out to the Flick company to see if they'll donate some of the buttons to be able to provide to the kids too, so they have something like physical they can push to have something happen, so they feel a little bit more connected to it.
Oh my God, I absolutely love that. That's fantastic. Chris, thank you for getting her to come and tell us a little bit about that. That was awesome. No, I really love that. I think obviously we've seen there are a couple of really young kids sort of in the community and stuff that I've seen online, but I haven't seen anything where it's like you know, someone bringing a group together and teaching and sort of getting people to, or getting kids to start to look at this stuff. And I love the flick button thing, by the way. I really, really love that. That's awesome. And the unicorn
Yeah,
thing
their
as well. That's
social
cool.
media marketing person, if you're not following them on like Twitter or anything, she's great. She's a lot of fun, but they have a connector built right into Power Automate. So super fun.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to go and look at that right after we're done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so I think that would probably, I think we're sort of coming to the end of the time that we've got. I mean, if there's anything that anyone else would like to add, please go ahead in the last couple of minutes and unmute now. Otherwise, let me just wait those few seconds. Otherwise, I'll hand back over to Sarah. And thank you, Sarah, so much for organising this. And thank you, everyone, for coming along today.
Oh, thank you, Lewis. I'm just in awe when I listen to you talk, and similar to Chris, I was running around causing trouble at your age. So no, it's great. It's great to hear what you've got to say, and everyone else as well. Thank you so much for your input. It's been really interesting for me. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
so
Was
much,
epic.
everyone.
Bye, guys.